I got one I'd like to discuss with you, Bruce, and it's something that's been controversial, something that I heard from a lot of people about, and it's something I do disagree with you with. Let me say that just to be fair, going into this, but you have a view, and correct me where I'm wrong, because you name-checked on your show. I went back and listened to it after I heard from enough people, Dave Meltzer and Wade Keller and Bruce Mitchell and Mike Johnson and several others. Your view seems to be something along the lines of the wrestling media doesn't have any merit. Is that correct?
I said they don't have any credibility.
Why don't they have any credibility?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because, and I use examples specifically, where in the past, and this is when I worked at WWE and TNA and different places, when you are there and by the way, I didn't bring those guys up until they started attacking me. And I don't read their stuff. It was all brought to me. So I will preface everything that no different than them, I got all my stuff secondhand as well. So, because I won't read. They don't have any credibility with me. When I sit there and I used to prepare the tax statements and the gates, and I would see exactly how many tickets were sold, how many were comps, what the gate was, what the taxes were. And then you would read in the Observer and it would have, well, this is what it actually was. And I would sit there and just kind of like, well, okay. And people would take that as fact because our records weren't public. And I'm sitting there going, well, if that's what the gate really is, why the hell are we paying taxes on much more? Why are we getting a computer printout from the arenas where we are conducting live events that say that we did this many ticket sales, we get a check for this many ticket sales, and we pay taxes for this? So when his stuff is based on hearsay and you're coming from a point of, I was there, I did see the real numbers, I did see the taxes paid, I did see all of that. Everything else that they say lacks credibility. When you are sitting there and you come up with an idea for TV or booking or what have you, and something comes out in the Observer and they're wrong. They're completely 100% wrong. And it goes a different way. They say, well, they changed their mind because it was printed here. And it's just the illusion that everything that comes out of there that is printed is actually factual. And they have no credibility simply from that viewpoint of knowing, having been there, and it's like, well, no, that didn't happen. In Brett's book, he says that his contract was this. Corny, you were there when we dealt with all that Montreal stuff, and how many phone calls did I remember when we used to have to go in the other room and I would have to get on the other line to witness the phone calls and stuff.
Well, hold on. Let me back up a second to what you said a minute ago, because I want to jump in the middle of you two guys and go down the 50-yard line, because I agree with you about Wade Keller and Bruce Mitchell. They're lying sacks of shit. I wish they'd die horrible deaths in front of their families, and I would never believe a word they said. I'd rather believe Paul Heyman as Mother Teresa than anything that Wade Keller or Bruce Mitchell said.
You're just a Southern Paul Heyman, and he's a sophisticated Jim Cornette.
Mike Johnson, I think, does a fantastic job, especially since Mike's only been around the last 10 or 15 years, and we're not talking about him in the 90s at this point. Mike, bends over backwards to be fair, to be honest, and to correct any mistakes he makes. And so I have nothing but good things to say about Mike Johnson and my interactions with him. And as far as Dave, to be quite honest,
they deal in rumor and innuendo.
Rumor and innuendo. No, they deal in facts. If you read their
they don't.
They report, Bruce.
They report.
They report what they were told by someone.
But what if they're told by someone?
Wait a minute, both of you. It's my show. I'm not finished yet. I've already motherfucked Keller and Mitchell. I'm going to put Mike Johnson over, and I'm going to say that I've been reading the Observer for 30 years. And while I do not agree with a lot of Dave's opinions, and he does love that flippy-do shit and PWG and all that other stuff, I don't agree with all of his opinions, or even the majority of them. Perhaps this relates to modern wrestling. I have never known Dave Meltzer to write an inaccurate something that he did not either correct or modify later on when apprised of the fact that he had written something that was incorrect if he was told of that. I've got to say that right now. I don't agree with many of his opinions about modern wrestling. Most of his opinions about old wrestling I do agree with, but he never put anything in the Observer that he was later told, and I know for a fact Keller has done this, that he was later told was inaccurate and didn't print a retraction or a correction. I got to say that.
And Bruce, on this topic.
Okay, I'm just telling you, he's printed a lot of false stuff, and I don't know that anyone ever challenged him till now.
On the numbers,
the difference.
On the numbers, though, on the actual attendance, because that's the specific example you brought up here. Dave had access. Vince McMahon gave him access to the numbers. Dave also.
No, he said Vince McMahon gave him access prior to 2002, is what he said.
And what numbers are you disputing? Are you disputing? Here's what I'm disputing. When he put out 3 different numbers as this is the real gate of this past WrestleMania that was held in Texas Stadium or AT&T Stadium, what have you, that he put out 3 different, these are the real attendance number. I think the first one was like 70,000, then it was something else, and this is how many people were actually there. There weren't 100,000 people in the building. And my point was that here WWE was putting out press releases to their investors and to different people with 100,000 attendance in there. And I'm like,
but that's bullshit.
So
there wasn't 100,000 fucking people there.
Well, so the building's lying? So the building, the actual arena that the show is in is lying.
We're talking apples and pomegranates. And when you're talking about attendance, there probably were 100,000. But then you're accusing when you're saying that, hey, there weren't 100,000 people there. And then go to the SEC if that's what you really think, and say that they're lying to their investors. It's against the law. They would lose everything on that. And my point is that he wants to knock down.
Wait a minute. It's not lying to the investors unless you report a wrong money figure. They don't care how many people's there. It's like the boys used to be. We don't care how many people's in the house. We just want to know the money.
Well, I don't care what Meltzer says, and I don't, because there's nothing. Again, it's like once you realize that you go back and you say all this isn't true, and you know that isn't true, then anything else they say has to be taken with a grain of salt.
But do you think
that's all I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. It has no credibility with me. That's all. I think Dave's a nice guy. He thinks I'm a loser and a con man. I always thought Dave was a nice guy. I never had anything bad to say about Dave. I have said that when he gets his information from people, from sources he doesn't want to name, he's usually getting information from people who want to talk to him and who want to get their story out and their side out. Since they're the only ones talking to him and giving him information, that's what he prints.
That's reporting.
We didn't know who did.
Okay, that's fine. Then he's a reporter. Take it for that. National Enquirer's a reporter.
No, but that's how Watergate got out. That's how we found out that Richard Nixon was a crook, because there were sources who couldn't give their names because they had to protect their jobs. That's how stories get out there. That's how reporting on stories.
You and I just both jumped on Deep Throat all at the same time, and not the porn movie. But here's the thing: regardless of how many people was in the house, honestly and truthfully, in a lot of the major stories that have come up, regardless of what company it was, Dave has done the best, most factual reporting on what actually happened. He's had a tremendous background on not only the bios of guys that have passed away.
Corny. Let me pick one subject. Pick one subject.
All right.
Montreal,
that was the best.
Montreal, hang on. You've read all the stuff that he's had to say about Montreal. Do you feel he reported that factually from the viewpoint of where you and I sat in Vince's house and what we dealt with all week long and everything that went down? Do you feel that he handled that fairly and accurately? Or did he take a side?
I don't think that he or anyone else could adequately express the frustration that you and I had to go through listening to those two fucking multimillionaires.
Do you feel he took a side and only reported one side, or do you feel that he did that fairly?
I was still answering the question, counselor. I don't think that anybody could adequately impart the frustration and aggravation that we felt because we were there, but I think that he reported the happenings and the facts of the matter fairly well, and I think he took Brett's side a little bit more but at the same time, since Sean was such a fucking uncircumcised prick, I wasn't really bothered by that. But he was a prick, but he was our prick. So we were trying to at least keep our prick, but
he was our prick.
Again, yeah, but once again,
but he didn't.
I was on that side too, because I wouldn't have put the little cocksucker over either, to be quite honest with you. But since they were all making more money than I was about to make in the next 5 or 10 years, I was really just tired of dealing with the whole goddamn thing, as you'll recall I've mentioned on several occasions.
Okay. Well, my point is that there were so many things that we knew on the other side that we dealt with that weren't shared to him by whoever it is that he got his information from, that you sit back and go, well, that's not exactly the case. No one was ever in the position. I'm simply sharing that from another viewpoint of how things affected me and what I was a part of and what I did do. It's things like, well, no, that's not true. Well, no, fuck you. It is true because I was there. I was a part of it. I did it. Now, if there were only 3 people in the room, then one of those 3 people either said something or somebody else said something, but only though, you only know what you know. And if someone wasn't there and someone wasn't a witness to it, then they don't know. They're getting hearsay and they're getting the story from whoever wants to tell their story and spin it their way.
That's true, but that goes. I'm sorry, Jimmy. That Bruce goes to the argument though about this year's WrestleMania. You weren't there, so for you to say that Dave's right. reporting, and for him,
you're right. And I preface this with, I said I was getting secondhand information because I don't read this stuff. I was simply commenting on what somebody came to me and asked me my opinion and said this was said. What do you think of this? I said I think it's silly. I think it's silly if WWE does press release. I said, what does it matter? And then they jumped all over saying I called him a liar. Didn't call him a liar. I said that I know on different times that he has reported just completely wrong facts from personal experience. So anything that he says is like, okay, I don't care.
Bruce, as far as Montreal,
wait a minute. As far as Montreal, we could easily hear the entire real story just by listening to fucking Russo, because he came up with the whole thing and even gave fucking Sean the finish. So there you go.
There's another viewpoint.
But nobody believes him because he has a history of being full of fucking shit. Go ahead, Brian. What do you want to say?
A few more things on this, Jimmy, if I may. Bruce, do you feel that professional wrestling should have a media that covers it beyond just reporting what a press release from World Wrestling Entertainment puts out?
Oh, sure. And that's fine. It's America. They can report whatever they want. I just feel that it's also someone else's right to dispute that if it needs disputing.
There's disputing, but I mean, I'll give you an example. You brought up on your show the idea that for a brief period of time, Dave Meltzer was employed by the World Wrestling Federation to report to them information about what was happening in Japan, correct?
Yes, and he was. And he said that.
Do you remember how that story got out?
I have no idea, but he's the one that reported it.
Maybe the most heartfelt issue of the Wrestling Observer ever in 1991.
Oh my God, heartfelt. Who cares?
Oh, listen to me, Bruce. It came out because the World Wrestling Federation attempted to get Dave fired from the National for reporting things they didn't like. And that's when he decided that was the time to reveal that, yes, he had been employed by them for a short period of time. Yes, they asked him to kill stories. He did once. He refused the second time. That all came out after they attempted to get him fired for reporting on things that they didn't
That's want. What he said.
That's like that fucking prick Russo.
That's what Frank DeFord says. Frank DeFord says that too. Frank DeFord's one of the most...
And Frank DeFord doesn't have a lot of credibility with me either, but...
Why doesn't Frank DeFord...
Or Phil Mushnick.
Well, I'm not talking about Phil Mushnick. I'm talking about Frank DeFord, one of the most celebrated sports journalists in American history. Why doesn't he have credibility?
Yeah, there's a difference between Phil Mushnick and Frank DeFord, for fuck's sake. Now, come on. And also... Do
you know Frank?
I don't know him personally, no.
Okay, I do.
Why doesn't he have credibility with you?
Because I know how he writes stuff. I like Frank, but it's just like,
Well, but you know that Vince...
And by the way, Dave Meltzer...
I'm just out of this show.
I'm sorry, Jim. But Dave Meltzer, you say you don't believe that's true. Dave Meltzer printed in the Observer verbatim the letters that the World Wrestling Federation sent to Frank DeFord to try to get him fired.
Okay.
It's pretty hard to dispute that.
Okay.
So again...
Did I dispute that?
You did. You said that you didn't think that happened. You said you didn't think...
I never said I didn't think that happened. I never said that.
Gentlemen, and I didn't even actually know that.
But I didn't say that.
So you agree
that's the thing.
So you agree the World
I said I don't think Frank Zafora, he doesn't have a lot of credibility with me. That's all I said.
So you agree the World Wrestling Federation tried to get Dave Meltzer fired from his job because he was reporting things they didn't want him to report?
I don't agree with that because I haven't seen what you're talking about.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I just said. You said you didn't agree with that the letters were printed verbatim in the Observer.
I'm lost.
I guess
I'm completely lost. My point is there's two sides, and if there's three people, there's three sides, and it doesn't make any of them right or wrong. So my point was simply when you're reading something, consider the source.
I've just completely lost.
Y'all are having a hell of a time over there.
I've lost control of this whole thing. All I'm saying is that Vince has been known, especially when he was the multimillionaire, to do some predatory business practices. There's things that he's done that then he's turned around and accused Ted Turner of, et cetera, et cetera. We've all walked down that path in the past. But I'm just saying, I think that Dave Meltzer, and once again, we can agree to disagree on personalities like we did with Jared Jarrett, who also, in full disclosure, actually his mother started me in the business, but same fucking thing. And I'm a big Memphis wrestling fan, and obviously,
so it wasn't him; it was his mother. Okay.
Well, no, okay. He started me, but
I was gonna give him credit for at least one decent thing, but then it was Christine. So
for heaven's sake, he put me in the business, but his mother actually let me start hanging around. And I'm a bigger Memphis wrestling fan than I would ever be a WWF wrestling fan, to be quite honest with you, because I liked that product, whereas. And I had the misguided effort of trying to think that I could somehow make Vince do wrestling when I came up there when nobody else had. I thought that lasted about 6 weeks, as you'll recall. But with Meltzer, I'm sorry. But while there may have been things that he has written that other people subjectively, based on their experience, could say, well, I don't necessarily agree with that. In most cases, in the vast majority of cases, factually, he has reported the events pretty much as they occurred. And
of course, he's been told they occurred.
And that's reporting. I mean, it goes back to
okay. I'm not arguing with you about that.
I hadn't put a period on it yet, and I think that he has done a much better job than anybody else in that field, especially the Kellers and the other of his ilk of the world. And so I agree with Bruce about 95% of the people in those positions and the websites that just repeat and repeat and repeat things that other people have told them. But whereas Mike Johnson, I know, is very conscientious, and he has had the advantage of being in the modern age where computers and things were more open. So he hasn't taken quite as much guff as Dave has, because Dave was out there reporting things in the 80s and 90s when the information was not as readily accessible. And I think he did a better job than anybody else during that time period of being factual. And obviously nobody's 100% perfect. So for heaven's sake, before that we have to goddamn separate you two boys.
No,
did Conrad prepare this guy or what?
I know more than him. Give me a break.
Don't make me pull this car over. I will pull this car over and nobody's getting ice cream. I'm telling you.